This is the file interaction activity in Java. I'm going to be doing research as we go today, so I'll open up a browser and make sure we do the research on the fly, just like you would as a part of your activity and as you're trying to solve this problem. So, to get started with, I've got the solution open here, I've got the project open in VS Code, and we'll notice that we have some errors and warnings. You may run into this as well. This has to do with Java versions. So originally the solution was built with Java version 22. You can see I've got 23. If you're not sure which version you're running, you can run a terminal window here and just do Java -- version, and it'll tell you I'm running Java 23. And that's the version I want to make sure to put into the pom.xml. So I'll open up the pom.xml file, scroll down a little bit, give us some more room, scroll down a little bit, and specifically I'm looking for these two Maven compiler source and Maven compiler target values. I'm going to change those to the version I have installed. Yours might be 24 or 21, mine is 23. I'm going to save that, and when I do, it's going to ask, do I want to synchronize the Java class path and configuration? The answer is yes. Anytime that is asked, you always want to say yes, otherwise you have to restart Visual Studio Code to pick up the changes. I'll give this just a moment. It's going to recompile, rebuild everything. It says Java ready, let's check out, and perfect. These are the warnings I'd expect, so we're in good shape. We should be able to run the tests now. I'll go ahead and run the tests, and I should get failures, and I do. So 4 failures. Let's take a look at these real fast. Basically, we're having a problem where we're trying to read the file contents from each of those. So this is exactly what I'd expect. Looking at this test class, we have a little helper method to get the file path. This is going to be the directory where the files are dropped on my local computer. So on the C drive, it's going to be in a folder called temp. In that folder, there's going to be a folder called whitebelt. In that folder, a folder called activity. In that folder, a folder called file interaction. And then finally, a folder called Java. So that's where the files are going to be for basically for this project, for our activity here. In addition, we've got this setup method that we're going to be using. This is going to create those directories. You can see that here on line 22. So it creates the directories to make sure that they exist in case they didn't already. Then we're going to create the files. We're going to copy the files from where they are and put those over there into that folder path for us. We've got 4 tests, one for the logo file, the accounts file, the transactions file, and the customer data file. So we've got a few different ways we can go about this. I'm going to start with the account balances file. So this is the accounts.json file. To help us out here, I'm going to pin this. To help us out, let me open up the accounts.json file so we can see what that looks like. So here it is as a reminder. So we've got 5 different objects, so an array of JSON objects. Each object has an ID, a name, and a balance property. We need to read these in. So let's start off with a little internet research. We'll say Java read and parse JSON file, which is effectively what we're doing. Not only do we want to read the data, we want to parse the data. That means extract the specific values and understand what's going on with the data. There's a little more room here. We'll see how the Copilot does, see if that's going to be useful for us. Give it a few seconds. All right, so it's saying we've got some options, json.simple, Jackson, and JSON. So option 1 is json.simple. Scroll down, option 2 is using Jackson, and then option 3 is using JSON. So these are 3 different packages or libraries that are third-party that we can pull in to deal with JSON files. So in other words, Java doesn't have anything built in. That's okay. We can use one of these. It doesn't really matter what you do. In fact, I would encourage you to explore them. I'm just going to use number 1 here, json.simple. So looking at json.simple, we basically need to, and so it doesn't have, well, that's unfortunate. We're going to need to pull json.simple. Oh, here we go. So in json.simple, it'll note down here, this is the dependency we need for Maven, and we're running Maven. So we need to make sure to add this dependency inside our pom.xml file. So I'm going to copy this to my clipboard. Let's head back to VS Code. And I'm going to reopen the pom.xml file. And the dependencies node is here. So we can see that. I've already got 1 dependency. That's for JUnit. I'm going to add a new dependency. I'm just going to paste in what I've got. Do a little reformatting real fast. So there's our import. So now we can use the JSON simple package as a part of this. I'm going to save. And again, yes, I want to synchronize the class path and the configuration. Once that's done, I'm going to head back to accounts, or I'm sorry, I actually want the account class. So I can either find that in the folder explorer here, or I can go to definition inside the test file, and I'm going to do exactly that. So we'll right click, go to definition. Here is the account.java file. We can see the structure of the class. And then specifically, we want to implement the read file contents in the write file. So read file should read that file, parse the data out, and return the list of accounts. Write file is going to take one specific or one single account and write that to a new file. So let me open it up and give us some more room. I know we're going to delete that. So from here, we basically need to read this. So let's get back to our our browser search and see what the example code was. So we'll notice it's got some imports. I'm going to let Visual Studio Code handle my imports for me. So we're creating a JSON parser, okay, and then we create a file reader to read the file. So it looks like the JSON parser doesn't read the file directly. We'll have to read the file, and then we use the parser to parse that file from the reader. That'll give us an object that'll be, okay, looks like it's either going to be a JSON object or a JSON array. In our case, it will be a JSON array, and that is because the file starts with the open square bracket. So we know it's an array as well. So ours will also be a JSON array. And then we're going to iterate through the objects in that array, and then we're going to do something with them. So this is not bad, actually. I'm going to go ahead and copy this code. It's pretty similar to what we want. I'm not going to worry about the catch. And I do need the JSON parser. So there's our code. Let's head back in. I'm going to paste this in. And we're going to need to make some changes for sure. So first off, the file name, this needs to come from the file path argument being passed in. So there's that file path argument. That's going to create our reader. We're going to parse object. I'm going to go and pull this out instead of creating two variables. I don't really need to do that. So I'm going to pull this down and get rid of obj. And let me convert to tabs real fast. There we go. I like that better. So here's our JSON array that represents, and not just a JSON array, this is going to be our accounts array. And let's call this accounts JSON array. So those are the account JSON objects. So we're parsing through, and yes, I don't need the comments. That is obvious to us. Now what we do need to do is when we're creating this, we're going to need to create a list of customers and return that list. So let's go ahead and create, or not customers, accounts rather. So let's create our list of accounts equals new, and this is going to be a simple array list. And then for each account JSON object in the array, we're going to pull that out. Okay, so in Java, we can't automatically cast a JSON object. So actually, let me just say obj here. And we're going to cast obj to account JSON object. So we iterate through the accounts JSON array. It's a collection of objects. It doesn't know what the type is. For each one of those, we're going to cast that out to a JSON object. That's going to let us get the values back out. Now you'll notice it says whatever the variable name is .get, and that'll give us the property that we're looking for. Our properties are ID, name, and balance. And these are int, string, and double. So we're going to need to get these values out from there. So let's do a little checking out. So I'm going to do account JSON object .get. Okay, so object comes out as object. So from there, let's see if we, oh, I'm sorry, this is ID. Let's see if we can do a cast to int. So we'll say var ID equals int. All right, that looks like it works. So I'm going to go ahead and try this for the other values. So we'll say var name equals, this is going to be a string. Account JSON object.get. This is the name. Again, I'm pulling right here. And the last one is balance. Var balance equals, this is a double. Account JSON object.get balance. So here's our values. And then from there, we need to add our account. So let's create account. Equals new account, and it wants all three of those values. So we'll say, okay, it's helping us out, perfect. All three of those values, we'll add that to our accounts list. And then finally, when we run through, we will return accounts. All right, it's no longer angry. That's excellent. Let's save that. I should, if I run this test, get a new error that should be on the right file. So let's verify that before we go too far down. Here's our account. And our error now is, okay, we have a cast problem. So it looks like it didn't like that. So let's go to the line. It did not like that. So what we're going to need to do is pull that out. So let's do this. So the cast won't work. So again, we're learning the library. What we can do is, I think we can turn it to a string, and then we can parse that value out for the specific types that we're looking for. So what this will end up looking like is integer.parseInt. Now it wants the string value, so I'll just take this dot to string, and now we're ready to go. So let's get some room so you can see the whole line. So integer.parseInt, and we're taking the get and we're calling that to string, so we get a string value from the object. This looks like it works. Let's do the same thing on double. Double.parse double. And again, dot to string, and close our parentheses. So again, let's take a look at the line. That looks reasonable. Let's run the test again. Look at our error message. Excellent. So we are now on the right file exception, which is what we'd expect, which means that it parsed the values correctly. So we're good there. Now what we need to do is write the file back out. So we're going to create our JSON file from the values here. So let's go back and let's do another search. We'll say JSON write, Java write JSON file. Let's see what it says here to figure out how we can do this. Copilot is a little slow today. All right, so we've got, this looks like it's using the Jackson library. That's all it's got. Well, let's change this because we were using JSON.simple. I think it was JSON.simple. Let me confirm the name. JSON.simple. Okay, here we go. Looks like we're going to create a JSON object, okay? And then we will put values. Okay, interesting. So we'll call put for each of the properties. Then we'll create a file writer. We'll write and then flush. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I think this is very similar to what we're looking for. Let's delete this, paste it in. All right, so JSON object. We've got put. So this is going to be ID, and the ID will be this dot ID. This will be name, and then balance. There's our values. Now writing, we're writing to our file path again, incoming from the argument. We'll write, we'll flush. We don't need to print anything out. Again, I'm going to convert to tabs. I think that might be it. Let's save this. So we've got some warnings here. This has to do with hash maps. I'm going to leave this alone for now. I think it should just work. Let's go and run the test. All right, we have a passing test. So we've now created the different objects inside the file system. So accounts is done. Let's move on to the next one. So we'll go back to the test file. So that was the account balances. Let's do customer data next. So customer data is our CSV file. So again, I'm going to go to definition. So here we need to read a CSV file, parse that out, parse the values out. So once again, we'll go back to our internet search. We'll say Java read and parse CSV file. Give this a moment. Let me come back here and look at a couple things. I'm going to go and open up the customer's file while we're waiting so that we can see what that looks like. So here's the customer's file as a reminder. The header row we're going to skip, and then we've got 5 different records here with a value that's the ID, a value that's the name, and then a value that's the starting balances. We don't want to keep the commas. We want to get rid of the commas. The commas are separating those values. All right, so let's head back to our internet search. Looks like we've got some options here. So we could either use OpenCSV. We could use the built-in BufferedReader, okay, interesting, and we could use the Apache's common CSV. So 2 libraries and something built in. I like built-in whenever I can, so I'm going to use that. Again, I would encourage you to experiment with some of these others. If you use, for example, the OpenCSV, you'll need to include the XML, the pom.xml dependency element. Now, this particular search did not give us that, so you might need to do another search that says Java, OpenCSV, Maven, dependency element, and then see what comes back. You should get some information there. But again, I'm going to use the built-in. That way I don't have to install any new packages. So let's take a look. We've got the file. Okay, that's going to be our file path coming in. We're going to use the BufferedReader from a file reader. We're going to read each line, that we're going to split on comma, makes sense, and then we do something with that. So this is pretty good. I'm just going to grab this try block. I don't need the catch in my particular case. So we'll copy this in. Let's head back to our code. And to give us some more room, let's paste it in. So again, file, this is going to be file path. Convert to tabs again. So for each line, we're going to read, I don't like abbreviations. Let's go ahead and spell this out. So for each line in the BufferedReader, and so this is some interesting syntax you may not have seen before. What we're doing is we're using the assignment operator. We're putting that in parentheses. Once the assignment operator is done, that will give us the value that was assigned, and we're comparing that value to null here. So it's doing this assignment first, and then whatever the value is in line that got assigned, that then gets compared to make sure it's not null. So it reads this into the line variable while it's not null. Once it's null, it stops the loop. We're then going to split the values on comma. For each one of those values, we're going to do something. So this is not exactly what I want. Again, let's take a look. I want to parse out the ID, the name, and the starting balance. The ID, the name, and the starting balance. So again, int, string, and double. So let's pull those in. Here for sure, I'm going to need to do a parse. So we'll say var ID equals integer.parseInt. And it wants the value. This is the 0th value, the first value in the column. So this will be this 1001. That's the 0th or the first value. Then var name is going to equal just values bracket 1. That is the second element. And then finally, the double balance is going to be double.parseDouble. and it's going to be values 2. These are already strings, so that's the nice thing about using this particular implementation. I don't have to take it to string, it already is a string. So once again, we'll create our customer object, and it's going to help us out. It's exactly what we want. And we need to create these customers, so let's go ahead and create our list of customers. Array list. Let's add our customer to it. And then finally, return the customers. All right, it looks like it's happy. I'm going to go and run the test again. This one's the customer test. Let's run this single one, and I should be getting a right file. Oh, no, we have another problem. Ooh, we have a number format exception. That's interesting. Let's look at that error message again. All right, for input string ID, number format exception on, let's look at our code, line 31. Parse int value 0. Ha! I know what I didn't do. I didn't skip the first line. It's having a problem reading the value ID. That's exactly right. So what we want to do is we want to skip that first line. So all I'm going to do here before we start, and I'm going to do this as a comment line here. So we'll say BufferedReader read line. We'll say skip the first line. So we'll just read that line, then we'll move on with everything. Let's rerun our test. All right, we are now failing on the error on the write file, which means the read file completed. That's exactly right. So now let's implement the read file. So once again, we'll go back and say write CSV file, which this is probably pretty straightforward. Since we just used the built-in, we could probably just write text out to a file. I know of a way to do that off the top of my head. We'll see what this comes back with in just a moment. So we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to implement our write file. Here we go. So it's using file writer, so that's an option, and we just simply append what we want to do. OpenCSV is another option. Apache Commons is another option. Okay, so we've got a few different options here that we could do. This looks like a lot of code, but I like the built-in, so let's go ahead and do that. So this is core Java. This is built into Java. We're using the file writer class. So again, I will just capture the try. I don't need the catch in this particular case. So we'll paste that in. This is going to be our file path, so that's exactly right. And now here it's saying append the first line. So our first line is a little different. Let's go back to the file. Our first line is ID, name, and starting balance. Let me erase those. And then we'll notice that it's doing this \n. We sometimes abbreviate that as whack in as we're talking dialogically. This is the new line character, so that's a new line that goes to the next line. So that's what we're doing there. On the others, we don't really want multiple lines. Again, I'm going to convert to tabs. We also don't need that, so we just need our values here. So we're going to create our own line. This is going to be basically the different values that we've got. So let's do a message format. So be bracket 0, bracket 1, and bracket 2. And then from there, we need to give it the values. So this ID, this name, and this starting balance. It needs to import message format. Let's pull that in. That looks correct. Let's go and save that. Let's rerun our test. We have a passing test, looking good. All right, let's move on to the transactions file now. This is going to be an XML file. And so again, we need to figure out how to do reading and parsing from an XML file. So let this pull up. Let me go ahead and go to definition. And in addition, I'm going to open up the file once again. So we'll open up transactions.xml. So we can see the data. So again, we've got a root transactions element. From there, we're going to pull each transaction value out. We've got an ID attribute and then 2 child elements. So let's see what our internet search pulled back. All right, so we've got the Java API for XML. That looks pretty promising. That's built in, so that's excellent. Looks like a good example. So let's read through this real fast. We're going to create a document builder factory. From that, we're going to create a document. We're going to parse the document out from the file path. So this will read directly from the file path. That makes it nice. Then we will normalize our document structure, okay. And then once we do that, we can get the root element, and then we'll look at the tags below that and run through each node item, pull out the values. Okay, so this looks pretty promising. This is pretty close to what we want. So I'm going to pull, again, this code in. I'm not going to get the try block. Don't really need that. So we'll go all the way down here. Let's paste that in. All right, so we've got our document builder factory. We've indented a little too much. Let's pull that back. Document builder factory, and then from there we're going to have the builder and all of that just to parse. So we can actually inline this. So let's pull this in here, get rid of this line, and then finally we can pull this in because we don't need it after this line. So we just start with document. Now it's saying we have a problem. Okay, so we've got multiple documents that we can pull in different namespaces or different packages. In our particular case, we're not looking for, well, we're going to have to guess. I'm going to guess we're looking for the org w3c.dom. W3C is the World Wide Web Consortium, and they are the ones responsible for the standards around XML. So I'm going to assume it's that one. Let's confirm that. Let's see if it's in the code here. Yes, org.w3c, so excellent there. So we've got the document, then we're going to normalize the structure, and then we get the root element. And again, we need to pull in. We've got a conflict. We do. So let's pull in the org w3c dom one. That's our root element. And instead of root, I'm going to call this the transactions element because that's the name of it. We don't need to print anything out. Then from here, we're going to get the elements by tag name. And this is going to be the transaction elements. Nodeless, let's call it transaction elements. Which means we need to rename that. So there's our transactions elements. We're going to iterate over that. Now from this, we're going to return our list of transactions. We know we're going to need that. So let's go ahead and create a list for ourselves. And an array list again. As we go through, okay, once again, we're going to need to do an import from W3C. It's not node list. We call this transactions element, and it's getting the ith item. So each item through that list, we're going to pull that out. If the node type is an element node, okay, so this is important because when we look at this, there are actually other nodes in here. We could get, this is a text node, even though it doesn't look like anything, that is a text node. So we do want to make sure that we're only getting the element nodes underneath. So we pull that out, and this is going to be element. So again, I'm going to rename this to transaction element. We don't need print lines. We do want to extract data. And so here, what we want is actually very similar. We want an ID attribute. This is going to get the ID, but we need it as an integer. So once again, we're going to parse that. String name, that's exactly right, except that, oh, no, that may not be right. No, we want the date. Yeah, so we're going to need to pull the date, not a name. This is going to be from the element by tag name. This is going to be a single element. Let's see if we've got... Okay, so there's going to be plural, and we're going to get the 0th item because there's only one of those. So we're going to get a list of these with date, which is a collection, which only has one element, so we will get the 0th item. And then from here, we'll get the text content, which is this value. Now, we need to parse this out. So there's a few ways to do that. We need to convert to a date object. So the simplest way to do that is going to be to use a new simple date format. Now, the simple date format needs a pattern. The pattern is month, day, year. So big M, little d, 4-digit Y. And this needs to parse the string of value. All right, I think that'll do what we need. Now we need to import simple date format and hover over. Yes, this is a Java util date, which is perfect. So that will parse the value out. Finally, we need to parse this as a double, the amount. So this will be the amount. And then again, we'll say double.parse double. And the value, again, it's the 0th item, and we want the text content. That looks about right. So now we're going to create a transaction object. And it's passing in everything. Oh, roll. That's not right. This is amount. And then add that to our list. Finally, when we're done, we will return the transactions. It looks like it compiles. What's this complaining about? Okay, so it's pulling from the document. Let's pull from there to get the children. Okay, that's interesting. It didn't actually use this element. It went back to the document, but I think that's going to make more sense. All right, so this looks right. I don't see any warnings. I don't see any errors. Let's see if we can get to the right file method. So let's run our test. All right, file input stream. So we're having a problem. On our code. On the reading, oh, because there is no example file or example XML. Of course, we need that to be the file path. Silly Chad. All right, let's run this again. There we go. We're on the right file method. That's exactly right. So now we need to write this back out. So again, I'm going to go back to our internet search and say write XML file. give that a moment. I have a feeling what we're going to need to do is create a document, and then we're going to need to add elements to that document. That would be my guess based on the fact that we're using the W3C DOMS implementation of the XML API. So, yeah, create the document, and then, yep, just start appending the children. Exactly right, exactly right. Okay, so this is basically the opposite of what we were doing. And then finally, we've got some transforming that we need to do with the DOM source, okay? So let's go ahead and, again, I'm going to copy this all out, and we will paste that in. Indent, convert to tabs, there we go. Once again, we can simplify some of these. So we're only using factor in the line below, so I will inline that variable declaration. Same thing on builder, we're only using builder in the line below, so I will inline this declaration. So here's our document. So once we have our document, we need to create the root element. This is going to be a transaction element. We're going to recreate one of these elements as the root element that we're trying to create. So this is going to be a transaction element. And then once we create that element, we have to append it to the document. So that's exactly right. Now we need to append attributes. All right, so I don't see anything with an example of an attribute. Let's see what we've got here. Transaction element. Perfect, set attribute. So let's call set attribute. This will be the name of it, ID, and the value will be this ID dot, actually just this ID. So it needs the string value. All right, so a few different ways to do this. I'll just do a quick message format again. Probably overkill for what we're doing, but it'll make it easy. So we'll format this, import, straight down as the string value. So there's our transaction element set. That's for the ID property, or for the ID attribute. Now we need two children attributes. So this will be our date element. We're going to create an element. And you'll notice we create the element by going back to the document. This is the way the XML API works. It's been around for 20 some odd years, maybe close to 30 at this point. So we go back to the document, we create the element, and then on the transaction element, we add the date element. And then we also need to, you'll notice it says create text node. That's exactly right. So we'll say date element dot create text node. There it is. And it wants the text. So the text in our case is the date. And then the date here, we actually just want to take it to string. Oh, I apologize. We need to append that to the element and create it from the document. So it's document.create text node. And then date element, we will append child. We're appending a text node as a child of the date element. That looks right. Finally, we'll do one more that's going to be the amount element. I'm just going to copy this because it's very similar to what I want. We'll change this to the amount element. Change that, change that. The name will be amount, and the value will be amount. This will actually look more like our message format, so let me copy that. All right, so message format 0, and we have the amount. All right, that all looks correct. Let's get rid of some of these things we don't need. Finally, it's going to save. So it's creating a transformer factory. I'm going to inline that again because we, again, don't use that beyond this one place. So there's our transformer, and the transformer is not used until down below. So again, we will inline this. Simplify the code a little bit. So the transformer needs a source, which is the document, and it needs a result, which is the file path. So I'm going to remember it this time. We'll change that to file path. I think that looks right. Let's save this and run the test. Let's see what we've got. Looking pretty good. With these three running, we're going to look at the last test, which is our binary file. Let's go and open this up. So our binary file, this one's really the simplest. In fact, I could probably do it off the top of my head, but again, let's go and do our internet search. So we'll say Java read binary file. So while that's opening up, let's go to definition on our class so we can open it up. And then again, I'm going to open the file itself. Actually, we don't need to open the file. It's a binary file. It's just an image. So all we're going to do is read the file contents as a byte array. And then when we're done, we're going to return that back. We're going to save that off. So let's see what we've got. Sure enough, we've got file input stream from a buffered. Let's see if it's got another way to do this. File input stream with the buffer. So there's actually a simpler way to do this, and I happen to remember it. So let's using files class. Let's prod it along. see if we can get us an even simpler solution. There we go, java.nio.file.files. This is what I was looking for. Here we go. File content equals read all bytes from the file path. Doesn't get much simpler than that, a single line. So let's head to our code. Paste that in. There's our byte array, read all bytes. And we'll return a new logo image from the file contents. Now, the file path, we have a string, it's complaining. The reason it's complaining is it wants the file path to be a path object. So we're going to say path of file path. And now here we've got a byte array, but we actually need it to be big, okay, so we've got a little byte array. We need it to come back as a big byte array. So let's just change it to little. There's no reason to make that be the class. We can just use the struct that's built in. So there's our contents. That was pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and run our tests to make sure that we're making progress. All right, we're on the save copy. That's exactly right. So again, this is going to be the opposite. Files, and I'm not even going to look this one up. This is write. And the write, once again, we need path.of from our file path. It wants this.contents. Options is empty, so we can leave that empty. Let's save that off. Let's run our test. There we go. Let's run all of them, make sure we're good. Sure enough, we have 4 passes. So there we are. So hopefully that makes sense. Experiment with some of the other libraries, some of the other packages, but that concludes our activity for file interaction in Java.